There's a few things that can fool you in the game, but you can easily prepare yourself by taking these actions. Getting new weapons is an exciting part of Genshin Impact, but there's one pretty big drawback that needs to be addressed before you continue growing your weapons in power. When you're at the blacksmith, you will notice you can craft enhancement ores which give you experience points to your weapons. Now until late game, you probably won't even bother creating these ores since you'll have plenty of them available from questing, exploring the world, or even by getting them from special events and the battle pass. You would also think that it's a waste of time and resources to craft these ores when instead you should be using them to create the weapons. But even with these both arguments in place, you'll soon realize once you get to adventure rank 40 how crazy expensive it becomes to upgrade a weapon from level 70 to 80. Not to mention the ridiculous amount of experience you'll need to take the weapon directly from 1 to 80. And this is when the previously mentioned drawback kicks in. Now that you want to start crafting the enhancement ores, there's actually a limited amount of times you can do this daily before you're locked out of any more crafting. Now there are a couple of solutions that you can use to plan ahead. First of all, don't invest experience points into random weapons and instead focus on getting your main damage dealer's weapons maxed out first. The second thing you can do is stock up on the ores. You can gather them from the world every 2 to 3 days because of the respawn timer, and you can also join your friend's world and mine the ores together. And for the hardcore players out there, you can create a second account and unlock the co-op option where you can then join with your primary account and mine all of the ores from the alternate account world. Finally, if you're set on acquiring some weapons from the blacksmith, make sure to get them as soon as possible and then start your daily enhancement ore crafting. And just so you understand, you can create up to 30 mystic enhancement ores per day, which are the best ores for upgrading your weapons, so make sure to add this to your daily routine and go out there mining from time to time, as this is especially easy to do if you have unlocked Ningguang, which will mark the ore deposits on your minimap. All in all, it's a good idea to stock up on enhancement ores, especially once you start raising more than few weapons, so make sure to keep visiting your local blacksmith daily. While on the same topic of raising the level, it's also important to note just how precious are the experience cards in the game. Just like with the enhancement ores, you'll have plenty of these cards until you start getting to adventure rank 35. And to give you some perspective, you need a total of 249 heroes wits or 996 adventurous experience cards to raise your character's level from 1 to 80. This doesn't even include the insane amount of cards you'll also need when you're going from 80 to 90. Now at adventure rank 45, when you're doing the blue leyline deposits, you can get about 4 to 5 heroes wits and 6 to 7 adventurous experience. So on average, you will need to complete 15 of these deposits in order to raise your character's level from 70 to 80, which is going to be around 300 resin, which is basically 2 days worth of resin once we get an update with 160 increased resin. And your character's level matters more than you think, since there is a special calculation that takes into account both yours and the target's level. Meaning if you go up against a higher level enemy, you'll deal less damage because you're lower level, but if you're higher level than the monster, you'll deal more damage. So what can you do about this? The most important thing you need to do is carefully consider which character you would like to invest into. Make sure to play the character first, complete some daily tasks, maybe even test them out in the Spiral Abyss, but just make sure to only transfer your best artifacts and weapons on them. Of course, this means you'll be missing out on some locked passive talents and your level will reduce the damage you deal, but your main goal is to figure out if you enjoy the character's playstyle and if you can see yourself playing them long term. And obviously, there are many ways you can acquire these experience cards, but they all run out eventually, especially if you're not focusing on few characters instead. And if there's anything to learn from years of gacha gaming is that these sorts of video games get a good number of events that give out experience cards, as we have already seen from the Crucible and the Marvelous Merchandise events. In short, stay smart, test characters before you invest experience into them, and only spend your cards on characters like your main damage dealers and anyone that is part of your core teams. And you will eventually collect a good number of these cards from world exploration and events, but they can easily run out if you're not careful enough. Elemental Mastery is probably one of the most confusing topics in the game, so here's what you need to know. Now we already know that you can easily spot the current elemental status above your enemy's head, so if you attack with another element, you will cause a reaction. And out of all the reactions you can cause, 2 of them work differently than others. But the rest of the reactions will only increase your damage based on 3 of these factors only: your character's level, their elemental mastery, and the enemy's resistance. And the most important thing you need to understand is that this elemental reaction damage is only based on the one who has created the reaction. So if the enemy already has a pyro symbol above their head and Fischl shoots her charge shot with electro element, she will cause an overload reaction that will be based on her elemental mastery and level. And there's absolutely nothing else that will affect this damage besides the enemy's resistance. It's also important to note that even if you switch out the character and their skill or burst creates a reaction, this damage will be based on their stats even if you have another active character. So for example, if Xiangling creates her Pyronado and you switch over to Fischl and shoot your charge shot to put an electro status on your enemy, once the Pyronado comes into contact with them, the damage will be based on Xiangling's elemental mastery and level. Of course, if Pyronado hits an enemy without any previous elemental statuses and then Fischl shoots her charged electro shot at them, then her elemental mastery and level will be taken into account. Basically, no matter where the character is, anything that comes out of them and creates a reaction will be based on their stats. Finally, as mentioned before, Melt and Vaporize work a little differently since they actually will multiply your attack that causes a reaction instead. And you can easily tell this apart because with regular reactions, a separate damage number shows up, while the Melt and Vaporize will instead multiply the damage from the attack that caused the reaction. This means that Melt and Vaporize take into account all the stats of the character that caused the reaction, attack, critical rating, and so on. Not to mention that Elemental Mastery further improves the multiplication effect. In summary, you won't increase the damage of your reactions with your regular stats other than the Elemental Mastery and your character's level, and the only exception to this is when you're creating Melt and Vaporize reactions, which take into account all the stats. And most important of all, the characters who add the second element to the enemy will be the ones who cause the reaction, and only their stats are taken into account, even if it means they were not present on the field and their leftover skill or burst created the reaction. Congratulations, now you can pick up the Certificate of Elemental Mastery at the nearest Gacha Gamer headquarters. Enjoyed the video? Make sure to support us by subscribing to our channel, enabling the notifications, and gently pressing the like button. We've got a lot more useful Genshin Impact videos, so make sure to check them out or visit us at gachagamer.com. Thank you for watching us.